Last night, President Donald Trump stepped onto the House floor and delivered what has now officially become the longest State of the Union address in American history. Nearly 1 hour and 48 minutes of speeches, applause, confrontation, and political messaging that revealed not only his priorities but also the growing political pressure surrounding his presidency. But behind the confident tone and repeated declarations of victory, a very different reality appears to be unfolding across the country. Because while President Trump told Americans that the United States is entering what he called a golden age, new polling suggests that millions of voters are not feeling that same optimism. And that contradiction may define the political battle heading into the next election cycle. Throughout the speech, President Trump leaned heavily on familiar themes that have defined much of his second term. He declared that America is winning again, that economic progress is accelerating, and that his administration has reversed what he described as years of failed democratic policies. At one moment during the address, frustration inside the chamber became visible when some Democratic lawmakers refused to stand or applaud. Trump responded sharply. He accused them of being ashamed and called critics crazy, turning what is traditionally a policy speech into a direct political confrontation. Moments like these energized his supporters but also highlighted just how polarized Washington has become. The president spent a large portion of the speech focusing on the economy, arguably the most important issue for voters right now. According to Trump, inflation has fallen dramatically under his leadership. He claimed core inflation dropped to its lowest level in more than 5 years and suggested grocery prices were rapidly improving. He even argued that falling energy prices were effectively acting like a tax cut for American families. But shortly after the speech, economic analysts and reporters began comparing those claims with official government data, and the numbers told a more complicated story. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, core inflation during the period Trump referenced was closer to 2.6%, not the significantly lower figure mentioned during the address. Food prices also continue to rise modestly year over year. Grocery inflation remains above previous levels, and while egg prices have declined compared to peak shortages, they are not down by the dramatic margins described in the speech. Even more striking, beef prices have continued climbing in recent months, and electricity costs have increased significantly for many households. For millions of Americans walking into grocery stores every week, affordability remains a serious concern. That gap between political messaging and personal experience may explain why public trust on economic issues has started to weaken. Polls released this week show President Trump facing some of the lowest approval ratings of his political career. Disapproval numbers in several national surveys now sit above 60%. Perhaps even more concerning for the White House, roughly 6 out of 10 Americans say the country is worse off than it was 1 year ago. Despite those numbers, Trump used the speech to place responsibility squarely on Democrats. He argued that previous policies created high prices and economic instability and insisted that his administration is now fixing those problems. It is a strategy familiar in American politics, blaming past leadership while promising improvement ahead. But analysts say the challenge for Trump is timing. During the 2024 campaign, affordability and inflation were central arguments used against the previous administration. Voters frustrated by rising prices helped return Trump to power. Now, more than a year into his presidency, many Americans expect visible change. And when prices remain high, political blame becomes harder to redirect. Outside Washington, reactions among voters reflected that divide. In battleground Pennsylvania, one of the most critical states in modern elections, reactions to the speech were mixed. At a diner in Allentown located in Lehigh County, an area closely watched by both political parties, voters expressed sharply different opinions. Some veterans praised Trump's focus on strengthening the military and national security. Others felt the speech was too long and lacked concrete solutions. One local voter criticized what she described as aggressive rhetoric toward political opponents, arguing that leadership should unite rather than punish disagreement. At the same time, many residents declined to discuss politics publicly at all, a sign of just how tense and polarized conversations have become in swing communities. Political analysts believe the true audience for Trump's speech may not have been Congress or undecided voters. Instead, it may have been his Republican base. Maintaining strong loyalty among supporters remains essential as midterm elections approach. Trump has historically relied on energized primary voters to influence Republican lawmakers in Congress. By reinforcing partisan messaging and highlighting cultural battles with Democrats, the president may be attempting to ensure continued loyalty within his party. Some observers even described the speech as resembling a political rally or reality television event more than a traditional State of the Union address. Special guests, dramatic moments, and emotional appeals played a central role throughout the night. Supporters viewed it as strong leadership. Critics viewed it as political theater. Either way, the strategy reflects Trump's long-standing communication style, direct, confrontational, and designed to dominate media attention. The political question now is whether that approach can overcome declining national approval numbers. Because while Trump remains popular among many Republican voters, surveys show softness beginning to appear even within parts of his own coalition. And with control of Congress potentially shifting after upcoming elections, every percentage point could matter. For now, the president appears determined to double down rather than change course. He is betting that economic improvements will eventually become visible and that voters will ultimately credit his administration. But until everyday Americans begin feeling relief at gas stations, grocery stores, and utility bills, skepticism is likely to remain. The longest State of the Union speech in history may have energized supporters, but whether it changed minds across the country is a very different question. And as America moves closer toward another critical election season, that answer could shape the future of Washington itself.